consistent. Okay, got it.
Wait, is this the one?
That is so cute. I love it.
Got it.
Wait, is this the one?
Do you, okay, now we're hearing the delay. The only.
Yeah, you will on YouTube.
That is so cute. I love it.
Got it.
Wait, is this the one?
How do you, okay, now we're hearing the delay. How did we stop the delay
Yeah,
the
you will
last
on
time?
YouTube. You can't stop the delay. You're just
Hold on.
probably gonna have to mute yourself or mute
I have an
mute
idea.
that.
Okay, now we're hearing the delay. Go on my YouTube channel. How did we stop the delay the
you will
last
on
time?
YouTube.
Want me to join?
You can't stop the delay.
Okay.
You want me to join it too?
Can you go on my YouTube
No, I
channel,
wanna
honey?
join it.
Danny, go on my, okay, I'll do it on my,
Wait, I can do it. I'm doing it right now.
okay. I'm gonna log in with my other account. Let me see how it's coming through.
I love the fact that your daughter is like you're involving your daughter right now. This is the coolest thing ever. I'm just like watching it. It's so cute.
Well, she's like, Mommy, you're at work all day, then you do this all day, so I never see you. So I said, how about we start doing this together?
That's amazing.
I don't know what else to do. I'm a 24 hours. Oh, guys, yes. Okay, it's on
Yay,
my.
we're live.
Hey.
Wait, Mommy, I have it. What do you want me to do? Oh, wait,
Start doing this together.
wait. What do I do? What do I
That's
do?
amazing.
That's it. That's it, Dana. I don't know what else to do. Okay.
24 hours of, oh, guys,
Wait.
yes. Okay,
What do I do?
it's on
Yay,
my.
we're live.
Okay.
What happened? Something froze. Uh-oh.
Wait, what do I do?
No, we're good. We're good, Danny.
No, I think something different. Oh, never mind.
Yep.
Wait,
Okay.
What,
All right. Yes.
Okay.
So-
Something froze for a minute. I don't know. I hope my internet doesn't mess up, but I think it should be okay.
Hey, Vicky,
Yes.
is there any way, do you see any button that says allow me to record like on my name or like in the 3 little dots or somewhere?
Participants. Okay, let's try participants.
Wait, more.
Let's click on more. Okay, Danny, click on more.
If not,
Stop
then-
live stream. No, wait, why isn't it letting?
Oh, record. Maybe.
I can click record. That button is available to me.
It
Okay.
says you're record on my end. It says you're
Ye-
recording, Laura. Like
Yeah.
it has a little record.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Vicky recording. So, or
Oh,
me,
okay.
I did set it up to auto record. So, yeah, it's being recorded. Okay. So maybe it's me
Okay.
recording and not you. So I wasn't sure if we all can record from our own little groups.
Wait, Mommy, wait, no.
Danny,
So if anybody has like a record button,
I don't know.
if you have a record button, you can hit it. That's what I said. If it'll let you record, Vic,
Oh.
you might want to on your ends, because then you'll have an immediate copy, and you won't have to download it from YouTube or anything. You too, David.
I have allowed to record local files. Do you want me to click on that for you, for each of you?
Yeah, I think that would be good if you guys, Dave, Cannon, if you want to record it.
It was only,
Is there a way to click for record?
so Laura, it was only allowing for it to do it for you for some reason.
Okay.
I could only
okay.
allow you to do
Oh,
it, but when
maybe-
I tried it with Chrissy and with David, yes.
Laura, do you pay for Zoom? Do you have like a membership?
I do, yeah.
I think that's what it is. I just
Oh,
have like
okay.
the free version, so I don't.
Oh,
Okay.
me too. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
that's gotta
fine.
be
I'll
what
just
it
get
is.
off YouTube.
So I'll upload it to Vimeo if I get the recording and it works this time. I hope it did. It didn't last time for some reason, so I'll upload it and give you guys a link, and then you can download it. So
I
Cool.
will also upload it on my drive, my Google Drive, and just like I shared the other conversation, I'll share this one with you too, so you guys can cut it
Ah.
and have it ready. Okay.
awesome.
I was thinking, should I post in the chat our lead magnets now, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you could do
Later.
that.
Okay, just
Yeah,
because-
just go to
Yeah.
chat.
Okay.
More than anything, we just want to make sure you announce maybe the website
Yes.
or the link.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to our chat, Danny.
I'm
Click
gonna
on,
go get a sweater.
click on Messenger. Click on
Oh.
Messenger right here, honey.
Okay.
Yep, right there.
What do I do now?
You'll see. So click on this one. Perfect. Now, go, Laura, I don't have the link to your stuff.
Mine is, oh, did I not put it on the, here, I'll put it in the,
Yeah, just put it into the
Chat.
chat and I,
it's just my website.
I'm gonna go get. a
oh, it's
sweater.
just on your website.
Yep,
Okay,
it's just my website. Yep, it's just the homepage on my website.
Yeah, I see it there, right there. I see it.
okay. Mm,
I'm just gonna send people to either my Facebook or TikTok, either one. I have the YouTube too. I just haven't done much with YouTube. Yeah, I see it there, right there. I see it.
Okay,
Yeah, just whichever you choose, just put it in the chat. We'll announce it too if as long as we can spell it well, right?
I'm just gonna send people to either my Facebook or TikTok, either one. I have the YouTube too. I just haven't done much with YouTube. Yeah, I see it there, right there. I see it.
I think we're on the loop. Can we mute that somehow? Yeah, just
Yeah.
whichever you choose, just put it in the chat. We'll announce it too if I keep answering the same questions in my head because I think that
Or TikTok, either one. I have the YouTube too. I just haven't done much with YouTube. Yeah, I see it there, right there. I see it.
I think we're on the loop. Can we mute that somehow? Yeah, just
Yeah.
put it in the chat. We'll announce it too if I keep answering the same questions in my head because I think that
Or TikTok, either one. I have the YouTube too. I just haven't done much with YouTube. Yeah, I see it there, right there. I see it.
I think we're on the loop. Can we mute that somehow? Yeah, just
Yeah.
put it in the chat. We'll announce it too if I keep answering the same questions in my head because I think that
Or TikTok, either one. I have the YouTube too. I just haven't done much with YouTube. I don't think mine came up as a link, but that's okay. It'll still be in there. They can find me if they want.
there should be a mute button. Did you find it, Vicky?
yeah, you know what it is? It's when I go to my YouTube channel, I just posted everything on the YouTube channel as well. So that
Okay.
it's doing
Okay,
things.
so that's why it went away and then started again.
Yeah.
Got it.
We got 5 minutes. I'm running to pee just in case I don't have to go when we
Okay.
start. So
Okay, so do you think?
I'm excited to see who shows or who
Me
doesn't.
too. Um,
That will kind of depend on how we set stuff up too, Q&A and what we talk about. And
Yep.
Can someone catch me up on someone in your email, you said 3 questions.
oh,
Are we
Yeah,
doing that
so-
or are we just rolling?
well, we're gonna roll, but in the event that, so I always have a framework because if nobody shows up, we'll just go with like the first thing that we all learned about forgiveness, and then we'll all, or like one thing we want to share, right? And then we'll go around each of us again and do the second thing, and then the third thing. If we end up having an audience, we we'll share one thing each, right? We just want to make sure that we're prepared, whether we have 5 people, 20, or it's just us, because we're already live and we're going to talk about our journey. So what I told Chrissy was, if it's like your favorite books or your favorite quotes or just 3 of your personal lessons, because I like stories, my own stories, I feel like they resonate with people. So yeah, that's all, just to kind of give us some framework.
Cool.
yeah, I have and as far as the story, I want to share that, but I just didn't know how much time we was gonna have. So I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna I'll just go with the flow on that because I just don't know. I can get going and I can not stop. So I don't know how much time we're gonna have. So
Yeah, I agree. That's part of
Baseball signs. I mean,
yeah,
stop
exactly.
talking if someone does that.
Mhm.
Baseball science.
So Vicky, you said you had a couple people from work or something joining, right? Or
So
something like that?
my executive coach, I was sharing with him that I was doing this on the side, and this is work related. So he's my executive coach from work that my work hired. And he and
Okay.
I were talking, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to be doing this on Wednesday and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, oh, well, that's interesting. He was like, I'd love to attend. And I was like, are you serious? He goes, send it to me. And he's like, very serious. So I was like, yes. Because honey, when we go live in 1 minute, it has to be professional. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, I sent him the Facebook link. So we'll see. All right. So far I see one.
Did one person already
How
do
will
it?
we know how many? Oh, participants 4. So it's us so far.
Okay. Yeah. I have I mean, I know I have, like, there's one girl that messaged me today and I've connected with her online. It was with the CBA group and we've kind of just became friends online. And she told me today that she had it on her calendar and she was coming. So that's one.
Yep.
Well, we'll find out. It's
But
a
if not,
mystery.
we're just gonna talk. If not, we're just gonna talk amongst ourselves and it'll be fun anyway.
I agree.
Exactly.
Um,
Vicky, do you want to do it? It's about 5:30. Do you want to do like your intro just about what we're talking about? So if anybody's tuning in on YouTube right now.
Sure. So on YouTube, we're at 1 person. I would assume it's me.
And
So
it'll be recorded too. So this will be up there for everybody to watch.
all right, fantastic. All right, so are we ready to kick off? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, I
Okay.
am.
Sure. Why not?
All right, well, it is that time. It's 8:30 on the East Coast time, 5:30 Pacific. For those of you who are joining us today, welcome. We are so delighted to be with you today. We have special guests. These are going to be faces that you will be seeing on a regular basis, whether it's going to be as part of conversations with Vicky, and there are lots more coming. So you got to see Laura, but you will be seeing Chrissy and you will be seeing David. And welcome. Today, we're going to touch on a topic that, interestingly enough, is something that all 4 of us talked about during those interviews that I was doing and the conversations that I was having with you guys. And so this whole idea came through because the more that I talk to people as part of conversations with Vicky, the more I'm seeing this one underlying thread, and that is that at some point in our lives, we all struggle with self-love, and it can mean so many different things to different people. But here's the thing, self-love is something that, we all struggle with, whether it's today or in the past. And so I want to turn this conversation over, and I really want us to talk about how we got on this journey of self-love, but then more importantly, what we were doing and what we did to overcome some of the challenges that we ran into. Now, the great thing is we're going to give you practical tools and advice, as well as we're going to give you some free tools in your toolkit that you can use. And we're also going to be here to answer your questions. So with that intro, I'm going to turn it over to you, Laura, for you to kick us off today.
Yeah. So we had such a wonderful conversation about self-love and how we all experienced our own journeys. There's always that catalyst where you realize that there's something missing, or there's maybe it's a wound or a hole within you, or an emptiness or something that just, it doesn't feel right. And I'll talk a little bit about my journey, and we can just maybe carry on the conversation from there. But a lot of what I did is I tried to find something outside of me to fulfill this, because I was so lost at where to look for it, and they say that they hide the diamond in the least place man is willing to look, and that's within. And that's exactly the spirit experience that I had, was looking and searching and seeking, and then noticing that everything I was doing was reflecting me back within myself, and then to look deeper. And it's almost like a resistance, because we're not really taught to do that, right? We're taught, society even teaches us to seek outside of us. So with that, I think all of our experiences are probably pretty similar across the board. But Vicky, why don't you tell us, I would like to share one thing that I want to learn, but just as far as like an intro, why don't we all just kind of talk about what was not what was the catalyst, but what was it that you noticed when it was an issue, that there might be a self-love issue? Like, what is it in your life that you were experiencing when you're like, oh, I don't love myself? Like, you had to come to that realization somehow, right?
Oh my God, this is such a tough question. And you're kind of flipping it on me because I'm not used to being the one being interviewed. So my story goes back to COVID. So COVID was that moment of, I feel, awakening or reckoning for so many of us. And here's the thing. When you look at my life story was, I was one of those people, when you look at me, you think, oh, she's so extroverted. On paper, my life was absolutely perfect. I went to all the right schools. I got the right profession. I had the right job. On paper, everything about my life looked really, really perfect. But one of the things that was happening for me is that I tended to keep myself really busy with friends and with, activities. And I was just constantly going. When COVID happened, it was that moment that forced me into complete stillness and isolation from all of those activities and people. And when I no longer had those distractions, I had no choice but to look at myself. And what was weird is that when I didn't have all of these external distractions, all of a sudden this hollow, screaming emptiness was yelling at me. And I had no idea what was happening for me. I had no clue where all of this was coming from, because if you looked at my life, check, perfect job, perfect everything, right? And yet there was such emptiness within me. And I would go on these walks alone and feeling so deeply lonesome. And I kept asking myself, well, if I am still with my family, if everything on paper is okay, why do I feel so incredibly hollow inside? Just hollow, empty as a drum, right? And that paradox that I was observing is what was pushing me and forcing me to continue to ask myself and to look within. And so that is what truly forced me into that introspection. And it is through that introspection and that need to just start to understand at least what is happening for me that started to force me into try to figure out what was going on. Now, interestingly, I didn't know I had self-love issues for a very long time. I didn't even know the term, to be completely honest with you, right? I knew the terminology of loneliness, emptiness, sadness, incompleteness. I felt extremely incomplete. So that's what I knew. And I was, it was like this ginormous jigsaw puzzle that I was trying to solve for myself. And I'll delve more into kind of, that introspection journey, because that journey to self, that's a discovery journey, is what ended up helping me figure out that this is what was truly happening for me. But that's what forced me to shine a light on the emotions that were dormant that I didn't even realize were there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so well said. And I can relate to that. It's like, we're all human, and it's, like I said, there's a catalyst. There's something that gets us to reflect upon the emptiness. So Chrissy, how about you? What was it in your life? Maybe not like a specific situation, but what was it that you realized when you realized I have a self-love issue? or a challenge?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I can relate to what Vicky just said so much, and kind of what you even talked about, and it is one of those things that I think we don't even realize. Like, we don't realize that I didn't know what the term self-love meant, and I heard a video earlier before. I wasn't even going to talk about this, but I heard a video from a psychic medium that I follow, and it rang so true to me. And she said, when, like, she was using examples of, like, say you're single and you want to find your person, et cetera, et cetera. And you think everything's great and it's okay to want to find your person. But if that's all you're searching for, then you're really just running, and you're really just searching outside of yourself to find that validation. And that was me, like, for 20 years, over and over and over, like, just looking for validation, for love outside of myself. And I'm kind of like Vicky. I mean, maybe not as exact, but I had a good childhood. Like, I've had some small T traumas, but I didn't have some traumatic childhood. I didn't have, I have a good job. I have a good family. I have great parents. And so it was kind of like, I didn't even realize that I had an issue, but yeah, I was in these toxic relationships over and over and over. And in 2020, instead of going within to find myself, I ran more. I started dating, go figure, during the pandemic. I started dating, bad idea. But and going to these clubs and doing things, like clubs that were still open, and doing things that were not in alignment with, myself. And it was just to get validation, to get the attention, and then it wasn't really until about the last year that it really hit ahead for me, after so many, like, heartbreaks and searching for that. And it really wasn't until I discovered meditation. And then after that, I discovered Gabby Bernstein, who was a lifesaver, when I heard her story and heard about her issues. And then I started meditating, and I went within myself. And when I went within myself, it was like, holy hell, like, this is what's going on. Like, I don't love myself. So that was kind of how yeah.
Again, beautifully said. I mean, I feel like I went through that too, because I did, I was seeking that love outside of myself. It's like, oh, and I would try to fix people too. Like, he doesn't love me, so let me fix him. So he loves me. Right. It's just, it just resonates with me so loud. So I want to ask you, David, the same question, and then afterwards I'm going to share one of the things that was a catalyst in me actually learning myself. There's all kinds of tools out there that we know of, like meditation and spending time with yourself, and reflection and all of these other things. But I'm sure that you can think of those times in your life, which was like, this changed me, this one thing. And I was thinking back, and I can imagine like there's probably a lot more than 3, but I can imagine 3 that really changed me on the inside. So after David shares, I want to share one of those, and then we'll just kind of go from there. And everyone tuning in, we will go to Q&A. So if you have a question, just raise your hand. And you're welcome to talk, but you don't have to, of course. You can feel free to listen in. So David, why don't you tell us about when you really realized that there was an issue with self-love within you?
Mine was
Just raise your hand.
pretty obvious for me, because I was not doing well mentally. I was very unstable. I was crying myself to sleep every night. There was something majorly wrong, and it was pretty obvious for me. It was mostly for me. It's weird, the discovery of, I don't really call it self-love as much as self-esteem is really how it started for me. That's kind of the language that I first encountered. And the first step of self-esteem for me was reaching out of what I knew wasn't working, and trusting that thing in me that was saying, hey, go and find the answer, go and find what's going on here. Because I was in a community that was very closed-minded, that was, very much guilt, shame oriented. So it was kind of a dual action, and I had an immediate sense of relief just by taking one step. And it really kind of, I don't know, it's like the road sucked me in, like I took one foot in and then it was like, oh, I'm gone. And then bam, it was like my life changed overnight and then just continued to change. It was really just reaching a point of unbearable inner turmoil, and the suffering was just too much for me to process. And I was in college at the time and I was just doing horribly. So, yeah, the pain was honestly like what kind of pushed me. And I was like, all right, if this is the right way, if this is, the way to heaven or whatever it was that I was chasing, I was like, then I got to go somewhere else because I can't bear this anymore. And the answers I'm getting aren't doing anything. It's just, you can only hear so much of, well, you just need to pray more, or, you just need to stop reading those darn philosophy books. They're just making you depressed. And, it was a recognition. Yeah, I guess the moment of recognition for me was actually when I was in the Army, though, and we were learning about PTSD. And I was sitting there, I was like, hey, that's me. I was like, what is this? What is going on? I was like, I thought only people who went to war had PTSD. And that's when I started realizing, that's actually when I started writing, really intensely writing, as well. And yeah, it just kind of led me to where I am now.
Yeah, it's a realization for sure. That's an amazing story. Again, I can relate to that too. And I think we all can, like I said. But one of the things that you said made me think about how that probably forced you to learn coping skills, right? Because when you're in so much pain and you're in so much pain, and I did that too. I was like, I was forced to learn coping skills. And I think that I just realized that was one of the biggest ways that I came to start loving myself, was learning that, because I didn't have it. That's where I did have PTSD as well. And it was building up and getting more severe, right? You can't function after a while. So yeah. Wow.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah, go for it.
Of the coping skills. I think this is a really important point. And for me, it was, I grew up in a broken home. My parents were divorced and, I went through immigration and a lot of hardship. But what was interesting is that to cope, I actually learned how to be a chameleon. And I learned how to fit in any circumstance or situation. Right. So I had to adjust to a new culture. So I knew how to fit in the new culture. When I went to work in corporate, I knew exactly how to adapt. And because I was constantly adapting to different circumstances, people, cultures, situations, I lost myself in all of that. I lost myself in my colleagues. I lost myself in what society was telling me I ought to be. I lost myself. And during COVID, that was one of the things that really was screaming at me, to the point where I was like, I had to ask myself, who is Vicky? Like, who am I? What do I believe? What is true for me? And what was really hard was that I didn't know the answer. And that put me on an entire path of self-discovery, and the journey, before I even knew, again, like at that point, I still didn't know the terms self-love, self-worthiness. Like I didn't know any of that. But what I had come to understand is that I actually didn't even know who I was, because I'd forgotten myself and my children and my husband and my job and everything else. And so I just wanted to talk about that adaptability, when we go through whatever, or even if you don't go through a difficult time, I think just as a way of like life happening for you, or to you, that's what ends up happening, is we just lose ourselves. We forget to ask ourselves, what do I want? What's important to me? Who is underneath there?
Yeah, I feel like you and I could write a book called Losing Yourself to Fit In, because that's exactly what I did too. My mom had 5 kids, and if you were getting attention, you were in trouble for something. So you just want to sit back and like sit in the back, like as quiet as you can. If you're not noticed, it's good. And you do just learn to survive. It's that childhood thing where you're put in a situation and then you just adapt quickly. And then even as an adult, I did the same thing. I said, oh, I must be doing life wrong. I need to go get this corporate job to fit into society because whatever I'm doing isn't working. So I must need to do what society's supposed to be, what they tell me. And it just made it worse. So I lost myself by trying to fit in too, so much so that after I tried that, I was like an empty shell. I was like, okay, that didn't work. So yeah. And then that's when you're like, okay, fitting isn't the answer, right? Because we're not meant to. So
I remember going through this journey, and as I was going through this journey, and like when you learn something, you just like want to go out there and share it with everybody. I don't know if you guys like went through that, right? Yeah. And so I would talk to, especially like I would find women, but men too. Men struggle just as much as women. That's the thing, right? And maybe David, you can speak to that, but I would talk to these women in corporate, right, that I would be friends with. And I would look at them and we would be on Zoom during COVID. And I would say, I would say the name, right? Who's Sarah? Who's Jane, for example? And they would literally sit with tears in their eyes and they would say, gosh, no one has asked me that question in so long. I don't know. They would look at me and we would sit and cry together because I didn't have the answer either. But I would be like, that's what I'm going through. Like, I don't know who I am. Like, that's where I'm at. And, my colleagues, they would sit across the Zoom and they would just cry with me. And so.
I think that if I can, I hope I'm not interrupting anyone, but I think it's interesting that it seems that no one, well, I can't say no one. I'm trying to think how I want to say this. It seems that there's very little curiosity about others in our culture, or the way we're raised. We're taught who to be, but it's like you hit this point in your life where you realize, has anyone ever been curious about me? Has anyone ever been curious, like brought that kind of like, I want to know the depths of you. I want to try my best to fathom these, these parts of you, what's under that surface of the ocean. I want to see what kind of life is teeming under there. And that's, I really like what you said, like, because when you just sit down and you're just curious about another person, it instantly, especially in certain places and cultures, it instantly hits someone. People either panic and they're like, oh, they want to hide, or they just feel that they feel seen. And I think that the self-esteem, the self-love journey is really starting with being curious about yourself, and not approaching it as who am I going to be? But like, what is this? What's going on here? Because everyone pretends to have the answers, but no one really does. I remember just a quick story. I was using ayahuasca to help me with PTSD. And I remember my very first experience. I just walk up to this door and it said employees only. And I got so mad. I was like, how dare you tell me I can't go in this door? Of course I'm on ayahuasca. So I'm like not in my right mind. And, and I'm like, all of a sudden something just came to me and it was just like, there's nothing back there that you don't already know. And I was just like, huh. And I started thinking about it and just this kind of unraveling started to occur. And I was just like, oh, and in an instant, I saw so clearly that nobody knew any more than I did about me. In fact, I was the only one who was ever going to know more about me. Other people were just going to assume, but I was the only person who could ever actually know me fully. Other people can try. And that's when all the projection of, my history and past and culture just started melting away when I realized, oh, nobody knows, especially not me. So might as well get to work, right?
Yeah. I remember I said, I stopped communicating with myself. Like when we're younger, we're born with, I think we're born with it. Cause I remember having conversations with myself when I was younger, like, oh, I'm going to go play outside. Okay, this is great. How do you like this? Or how do you like that? And we innately as kids, I think, know what to do to make ourselves happy when we're kids. And then I remember I was probably 37 years old. And I said, gosh, I haven't had a conversation like in my own head with myself. I'm like, who is this person I'm even living with? Right? Like, what do you like to do? I don't know. What do you want to do today? Well, I don't know, and it's such an important relationship, like our relationships with other people. It's like we want to love them, and it's that reciprocated thing. But when we realize we hit a wall with ourselves, it's like there's no reciprocation because we don't even know who this other person is, right? So it's like the ego and the self and the personality. We're all trying to love each other and get along, but we don't know each other, and we're faced with that. So
exactly. Beautiful, beautifully said.
Yeah.
Well, I also think it's generational too, because, like, I think there's one element to it is the curiosity aspect of it. But, if we think about 1 or 2 generations back, right? I think about my mom or my grandmother. I don't think they were taught to ask themselves. Like, I don't think it just like societally, right? Like, no, there were so many pressures to just survive, just to put food on my table, right? Like, we were, as a society, as a humanity, right? We were so focused on just survival that no one asked you, like, who are you? Like, you didn't have the time to get philosophical and to contemplate these bigger questions, right? And so as we're growing up, and that's not imparted upon us, yet, it takes us decades to come to the point where we go on that introspection. Whereas now, I'm a mom, I have 2 kids. I absolutely encourage introspection because I've gone down that path and that journey. And now I want that for my children. And I want them to have that sense of self and to have that inner voice guiding them. Not just because I feel like with my generation, my mom's generation, you were basically like told what to do, right? Like down
Exactly.
to like, my mom, right? Like it was like my grandmother, her husband was selected for her. My mom was kind of, her husband was like, my dad was kind of selected for her. She had some voice, but not a ton of voice in that, right? So you just think about how we evolve as a society, as humans, as beings, and and hopefully what we're doing right now and shining a light on that is going to help the next generation so that they start to introspect and to ask themselves that question.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And, I was raised by a single mom, and I was a single mom, and I had, with one income, I was the same thing. I lost myself in the survival of just every day, just cleaning, working, managing schedules. So I do for sure know it's like, look at the projections or the how you were programmed in your childhood, but also in adulthood, because it didn't end in childhood, because I had to deal with a lot of adult programming that I was like, wow, that person wasn't good for me. What did I learn from them, and how can I unlearn it? Right. So
yeah. And I think I just want to touch on, I hope I'm not interrupting either, but something she said, and I think it was very such a key point is if because there is a thing as multi-generational trauma, and there is such a thing as, there's scientific proof now that like things that our ancestors experienced, we do carry with us. And so I think it really is important to get some of the young people before they're married, before they have children, to understand these concepts and to kind of help break those cycles, because then we can break the cycles and not have the people going through the stuff that we've had to go through, because they're going to be healed already. So I just wanted to touch on that little aspect there.
I think that is also one reason I like to say that forgiveness is understanding, because when you really start to see the chain that we're all attached to and that we've all come from, it's like you said, I can't remember who it was just now that said, I don't think that they were taught this. I don't think they knew that. I think it was Vicky. And you really start to look back and you see that it's like, there wasn't access. It's like you said, it was my family. I'm just the second generation that didn't grow up on a farm back in back in the hills, and it's like, I talk to my papa all the time, and he tells me that he was kind of that philosophically minded kid, but like there wasn't space for that. It was like, who am I? Doesn't matter. You go milk the cows, like it just doesn't matter. Like it. And now I feel like it's actually a good thing. It's like when society, or we get to a level where, the basics of life it's kind of like breathing. It just happens and you're not thinking about it. And it gives us a chance to expand. And in that expansion is where we find the totality or the wholeness that I think is the very fabric of self-esteem, not just on the individual level, but also on the collective level. Is what is the whole of me? And when I'm not focused on survival, which is really kind of a fear instinct, when fear is melted away, what does that leave space for? And if you can answer that, I feel like we spend the whole rest of our lives answering it, but.
Yeah, very well said. I agree. Which made me think about because if those of you on my website or on here, if you go to my website, lauraperry.com, on the homepage there, you can download some cards that I made, and they talk about the perpetuation cycle, because we have this perpetual cycle in life, and we're always in a perpetual cycle of thoughts and actions and behaviors. And that cycle of the lack of self-love, I'll call it that, is just negative thoughts about ourselves and negative emotions and negative behaviors, and they self-perpetuate each other. And so my goal with making those cards and writing an ebook is to change it to just it's still a cycle, but it's a different cycle that gets you on a higher vibration, right? It just, you get positive thoughts, then you get positive emotions about yourself, and then you have positive actions. And those three things feed each other perpetually. And like you said, David, it expands. So it's like you build this, you start with a little momentum and you're going through the sludge of it, right? You guys probably felt that when you're like, okay, I'll do this for myself. Fine. I remember when I went on my first backpacking trip by myself, I was terrified, but I was like, I like to do this and I want to do it. So I'm going to go out in the middle of the woods and I'm going to do it. But I did it. And when I came back, I had the evidence and the thoughts of like, wow, you did that for you. You had fun. Here's what loving yourself feels like. And here's a little bit of momentum to carry you through the next one. And it literally, like you said, you become that cycle. So it replaces one cycle with a whole new cycle, and it's a different way of being. And I think it's one of the most profound experiences that I've had in my life. And I could go really deep and just like how it was always there. I just wasn't paying attention to it. Like the self-love for ourselves, it's always there. It's innate. We just don't notice it because we were trying to fit in, or we were going through, whatever we were going through.
Trying to be what we're supposed to be.
Yes. And everything else society taught us, or our parents taught us, or our friends taught us. So yeah, I 100%. That was a good point, David. Thank you. So does I want to share one thing, but if any of you want to touch upon any of that, I'd like to see if we could just share.
What you said about the cycle is that what you really find out is that you're always in a cycle, always. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the tricky part, is when you first tap into it, you'll catch a glimpse of something. Like if you're rotating, you'll catch a glimpse of something, but then it's like you pass it. You're like, oh, where did it go? And then it pops back up again. Then you pass it. And in meditation, they teach about finding the space in the thoughts in between, and it opens up, and you find you're kind of in this enclosed thinking loop. And it's whatever that pull is that's telling you, hey, something's off or something not right. Like when it comes into your cycle or your system and you're aware of it and you lose it, it will come back. And so I like what you did. It's about being ready when it shows itself to pounce on it, to take that action. And that confidence over time, the more you do that, you're actually building confidence because you're entering back into relationship with you. And the more you listen to that voice, it compounds on itself. And then next thing you know, you find you're being creative, and you're no longer being reactionary. You're no longer being carried by the current. You have kind of taken control of that current, and you're like, oh, I'm going to direct it this way. I'm going to move it that way. It's like receiving and then ooh, okay, I got the, I can push it back now slowly. And then, but yeah.
Yeah, great point. It is definitely a cycle, and that's why I named my cards in my ebook the self-love cycle, is because it was just a different cycle. So there is no good and bad in the world, you guys. Everything just is. So which one do we prefer? This cycle or this cycle? Well, this one is low and slow and heavy because it's a lower vibration. And this one is high and joyful and full of love. And so I realized that I didn't like the other one. I didn't like the negative cycle. It caused separation. It caused heaviness. I felt like I was separate from the whole. And just the other cycle, I was like, wow, this is what positivity is. This is what being closer to the light. This is that connection to myself that has always been there, but I just couldn't see it or I couldn't find it. And so again, it, like David said, it's literally just another cycle. You're always in some kind of cycle. And it is that thought, emotion, action, perpetuation of, what are you doing? What are you doing for yourself today? I'm sure Vicky can speak on that. What did you do for yourself today? Because I know we had that conversation. So
I did. It's interesting. So, when I went on that journey of introspection, I did a lot of journaling. So that's how I actually went through my self-discovery journey. That is like literally what I would ask myself, like, did I do one thing for myself today? Or, how do I feel today? How did I show myself love today? Anyways, like I asked myself a lot of different questions, and I prepared some journaling prompts for anybody who wants them. But I think it's really important to introspect and to reflect on yourself. The other thing, though, that I did learn through my journey is that what you resist will persist. And so you talk about these cycles, and I think that it is really difficult for us to get out of repeating the same cycles over and over, until we will continue to repeat the same cycles over and over until we actually look at what is happening for us, right? And life will, when you start getting on this path of introspection, awakening, however you want to think of it, life will start happening for you and not to you. I'm a huge believer of, and what I've found is that, like Chrissy, you talked about dating and that you would continue to date the same people. That's a cycle, right?
Yeah.
And it is not until you shine a light on and recognize the fact that this is happening for you and that this is happening in your life. And I think that pain is going to scream at you so loud that you're going to be forced into looking at that, right? And so we will, like, I think that's one of the things that is both beautiful and scary about this journey, is that you will be forced to look at what is happening for you. Not painful enough? Well, let's get it even louder and let's get it even more painful until you will notice it, right? And so that's what I love so much, Laura, about your cards, because it helps you see the points and I'm going to call them key moments of truth. I'm bringing in my day job, but those are kind of like those key points in the journey, in the cycle. And it is not until you shine a light on it and you see it for what it is. And I love the way, Laura, you said it's not about good or bad. It's just about seeing it, because all it is, Chrissy, you talk a lot about the small T and the big T trauma, and maybe you can delve into that a little bit more, but it is not until you see it that it can dissolve. That's the thing about the paradox in seeing what is there, right? That's the paradox, is that we tend to suppress our emotions, suppress our thoughts, push them away because we're so afraid of what is there. But the moment that you look at it and the moment that you accept it and the moment that you stop judging it is the moment that you can transmute it. And maybe, Chrissy, you can speak to the small T and the big T, because I know you've done so much work around that.
I have, yeah, and I think that was so beautiful, Vicky. I just have to tell you, that was absolutely beautiful. And you're right, becoming aware is the most important. I mean, that is the first step. Like, you have to become aware. This is a shadow that lives underneath the surface, and so we have to become aware of what is going on. And it's hard sometimes, but journaling and meditation and going within, it's that is really the key. And yeah, small T and big T trauma, you know, and it is something that I did learn from Gabby, and I did a lot of research on it, because we think about big T traumas as like abuse and molestation and pandemics and all of these other things. And those are things that, you know, are oftentimes you get help for. Like you recognize that it was a huge trauma, and you go and you get counseling, you get therapy, you get all of these services. The small T traumas they can be almost worse in a way, because people don't get help for them. A small T trauma is, you know, like like I had a whole friend group leave me in junior high. You know what I mean? That is a small T trauma. That's a huge issue as a junior high school kid, to have your whole friend group like start rumors about you and just leave. You know, that's huge. It can be bullying at school. I remember being 5 years old and wanting to this is a silly story, but needing to go to the restroom, and the teacher not letting me, and I wet my pants in class. And I remember everybody laughing at me. That was huge. That was huge for a 5-year-old kid. That's a small T trauma. You don't get help for that. You don't even talk about it. It's just something that happens, but it builds up. And that's basically how it is. I mean, and it can really be detrimental, and it can really cause some major things to happen psychologically to you that you don't deal with until you're 43 years old or whatever, you know? So yeah.
Yeah, I see it like a broken leg. That's gonna kind of cut your workout for you. It becomes very obvious. You're not gonna be able to walk, But then a thorn in your foot,
Mhm.
you're like, well, I can deal with it. I can deal with it. But over time, it festers. And next thing you know, you got to amputate because you got gangrene or something. You just kept pushing it off and pushing it off and pushing it off. And it's either one, it's literally just an element of time. And we know that time is relative to the experiencer. So, at the end of the day, I don't, I think like we use like the small T, big T trauma, but at the end of the day, like when it comes to self-esteem or self-experience, you just have to be honest about how much an experience meant to you. If it meant a lot to you, then it meant a lot to you. There's no sense in trying to pretend it didn't. Like who cares how small or big it is? Like if it mattered to you, then it mattered to you. And that's what this whole thing about understanding yourself is. You have to know what matters to you and what doesn't. Some things, some people can let roll off their back, and another person, it's like a shot in the head. Like it's learning yourself.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. It reminds me, David, about I have this foundational belief that under all of this, we're just these beautiful shining diamonds, and we're all polished and everything. But there's just this dirt and then dust, and then everything piles up. And then, before you know it, you can't see yourself anymore, and when you take the steps to start uncovering and clearing off all the dust and knowing yourself and learning about yourself and finding out what really matters, to you, and like you said, you just a little bit more light comes through every single time. You get brighter and brighter and brighter. So yeah, totally. I 100% agree with you. And that's a really good point that you made, is if it matters, it could be the smallest thing, especially with trauma. Some people bounce back right away. It took me 7 years to get through PTSD.
Me
so too. Yeah. I mean, I didn't think I was ever going to get through it, and I had never talked to anybody that had gotten through it, and there was nobody to tell me how to get through it. So, and they're like, oh, that happened. I remember the counselor telling me, oh, you can't have PTSD because it didn't happen to you. Or, oh, no, you didn't go to war. That you didn't go to war, so you can't have PTSD. And I was like, what? I need to find a different doctor. I know.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
I know. That was the medical industry.
Yeah.
7 years ago,
Yeah.
So, and it's still kind of hard to find help. I ended up trying 16 different therapies, and I finally found a few, that actually changed my life, but I had to go through all Western medicine first. So.
Yeah, Jerry says that's still the medical industry, and she's right. I mean, I'm in the medical industry, and it is, I'm a nurse, and so it is changing. But it's still the medical industry. Like it's really hard. I do know that it's changing. There are people that are starting to delve into this stuff, but it's still a very slow progress. So good point, Jerry. It really is still a slow progress. And so we're making headway, but it's nowhere near where it needs to be.
It's nowhere near where Eastern medicine is. I tell you that. So,
Yeah.
and, naturopathic doctors, and there's
Yeah.
a lot of that. So, yeah. So I wanted to share a little bit about, I'm not sure if we're going to get through all three of our things that we all wanted to share, but one of the things that I wanted to share is that when I was at my, how rock bottom has a rock bottom, and then sometimes rock bottom has a rock bottom. Well, I ended up at 39 years old, moving out of my apartment. And I was in this relationship that wasn't working out for one reason or another. I had moved in with my boyfriend, and I was like, that's a terrible idea. I can't, this is moving too fast. I need to breathe. Whatever. I quit my job because I was so overwhelmed with life. And I ended up moving back in with my mom, who lives like 2 hours in the middle of nowhere. So I was 39 years old, lived with my mom. I went from making six figures a year, over six figures, to making like $17 an hour because I needed something to do. So I had some savings, but I was like, oh my God, I used to charge like $150 an hour. Now I'm making like 17 because like I was trying to think of my job as like free therapy because I needed something to keep myself busy besides sit in my stewed mind all day. But anyways, like I was just a disaster, and I was with my mom for 6 months, and I wanted to share one of the things that she said to me, because everything that I had been, the experience that I had had in my life over the 5 years of being in like a toxic relationship and it affecting my life and my daughter's life and, people around me, I was having a hard time processing all of that. And it did lead to a lot of trauma because there was a lot of things going on at the same time. And I had no coping skills to handle 2 or 3 of them, let alone, all 10 of them coming at me. But my mom she said, Laura, you have to forgive yourself. And I was trying to forgive other people. I was trying to forgive them so that their burdens wouldn't hold me down. And for the first time, I realized that I was holding myself down by not forgiving me for making those choices, for being in that relationship, for choosing to stay, for, filing the paperwork to get out of the relationship, for everything that hurt me on top of that caused insult to injury. I was blaming myself and shaming myself on top of the trauma that I was that I was experiencing. And so I realized, how do I forgive myself? Like I had to accept the situations. I had to accept my choices. And I realized in that moment that I have to stand by myself. Like I didn't make choices just to see what would happen. I made choices because I thought they were the best ones, and they ended up hurting me. So I realized one of the biggest lessons that really transformed me was I needed to figure out how to forgive myself. And one of those ways was to take ownership of my choices and stand by them no matter what. If I made the choice, it was something that I decided to do. And I thought it was what was best. And I was doing my best at the time with everything that I had and everything that I knew. So she did. At the end of this, I'll recommend the movie that she had me watch, because I ended up watching it and just bawling my eyes out. And through that, I learned forgiveness from this movie. Surprisingly enough, I thought it was the silliest idea ever. But I watched it and I cried, and I called Robert and I said, you have to watch this movie, because we were friends back then. He's like, no, I'm not going to watch this movie. I said, just watch it. And he calls me, he's like, I cried so hard, because you're releasing all of this stuff. And he's like, oh my God. And then he calls his sister and he says, you have to watch this movie. She's like, why did you have me watch this movie? So I don't know if you guys have seen it, but I'll tell you at the end of this what it's called. And I hope that you watch it. And if you have seen it, watch it again, and you'll see the lessons in forgiveness, because the guy who wrote the book and the movie, he has a wonderful story. And he ended up like writing the book and it not being published for like 5 years. And then it just turned into a movie. And so, yeah, there's also a workbook that goes with the movie. I didn't even know these things existed. So it's it's just one of the ways that I learned forgiveness, not only for other people, but for me too. So that was one moment in my life that shook me to the core, and I released and learned and graduated to a different step. So that's what I
so
wanted
beautiful.
to share.
That's beautiful, Laura. I love that. Your mom sounds like a beautiful human being. And like I'm literally like, I don't know if you can see it, like I have tears in my eyes right now. Like that was a beautiful story. So sorry, but I'm prior. So anybody watching, like I'm an emotional person. So I tend to cry. So
Yeah, that's okay. I am too. I'm not crying right now, but I am an emotional person. So
Laura, I love what you said, so one of the ways that Chrissy and I connected was through our discovery of Gabby Bernstein, because, when all of this was happening for me, I had no idea what was going on, and I just knew I needed help. And the funny part is, I really used to laugh at the self-help industry. I used to be like, what loser needs help? Like, who needs self-help? This is so dumb, right? Like, I used to laugh in the bookstore and I'd like walk right by it.
what
right?
even is self-help back then, right?
Exactly. I was like, what the heck is self-help? And who are these emotionally damaged people, right? Because I never thought I was emotionally damaged. But anyways, that's not where I was going with it. But but one of the ways that Christy and I connected, she was like, I discovered Gabby Bernstein. I was like, I discovered Gabby Bernstein. She at least started to tell me like that spirituality is a thing, that meditation is a thing, right? Like bits and pieces, right? It's like the bookshelf will fall off the book will fall off the bookshelf when you need it, or the teacher appears when the student is ready. So clearly,
Totally.
Christy and I were ready for Gabby Bernstein. But anyways, long story short, so Gabby Bernstein had this relationship challenge. And it's funny because I always thought that the relationship challenge was to help me heal my relationships with others, whether it was in my romantic relationships or, other relationships. And one of the days she had a journaling prompt. This is why I love journaling prompts. It like really got me to think. And so one of the journaling prompts was, identify all the things and all the ways in, who you need to forgive and what you need to forgive them for. And in that journaling prompt, she said, it could even be you forgiving yourself. And I was like, what? Oh, that's interesting. And that really made me take a pause. And as part of that day's exercise journaling prompt, she said, what you can say to yourself is a prayer or a mantra, and that is, I forgive you and I release you.
Yes.
And she said, and you can even say that to yourself, I forgive you and I release you. And so I did the journaling prompt that day, and I was like a good student. I wrote everything out and I reflected. And, the following day, that phrase just continued to stay with me. I forgive you and I release you. I forgive you and I release you. And, in my meditation that morning, I sat and I said, I forgive me and I release me. And when I said this to myself, I mean, when I say cry, sobbing. And there was such a deep release when I did that. And then I was doing that for 30 days because like every day I would do it, every day I kept crying. There was so much that I felt I needed to forgive myself for. You talk about choices, you talk about decisions. Listen, we all have things in our pasts and our histories, some things that maybe we judged ourselves for, or that we weren't proud of, we didn't feel good about. Like, there's no such thing as perfect. I certainly had that. And so I just would cry and cry and cry for days on end every time. And it's weird when I would say it, I forgive you and I release you, and I would like envision my father or like whoever I felt did wrong in my life. I never cried. It was more like, all right, I'm forgiving you because I just don't want you in my energy. I just don't want you in my field. So I just want to get rid of this heaviness and this anger that I have towards you, right? But when I would say it to me, I would just cry and cry and cry. And so for anybody who is feeling any sense of, holding on to whatever it is that you might be holding on to, I highly recommend in your meditation to kind of go through and to forgive yourself. It really helped me. I forgive you. I forgive me and I release me. It really helped me. So if anybody is, struggling with that, try that in your meditation.
Absolutely. I just want to touch on that for a second, because it kind of goes along with that. But if anybody's heard of I think if I pronounce it right, Ho'oponopono. I don't know if anyone's heard of that. It's an old like Hawaiian thing that they do, but that's what they say. And that the words are, I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And that's, again, kind of the same thing. If you say it in your meditations and you're basically taking responsibility, but you're also forgiving yourself. You're saying, I'm sorry to the divine, whoever has been in your life. And you're basically like releasing your energy field and you're letting it all go. And there's actually been, I can't go into it all. We don't really have time, maybe in future, lives that we do, I'll talk about it, but it is something that has been done, and people have been very healed by those 4 words. So
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I remember I did that as a mantra for years, actually, after I heard about that. And I was like, I would get to the I love you part and I'm like, I don't love you. I'm just trying to forgive you right now. But I eventually worked into that. So, but it's interesting that you talk about relationship, Vicky, too, because I was in a relationship that was toxic. And what I noticed about that relationship is he had walls up and I had walls up. And the walls that we had up between each other were equally proportionate to the walls that I had up within myself. And the other thing that I noticed is that when I would block the bad energy from anything, I would also block the good energy. And so by trying to, avoid, like you said, what we resist persists, by trying to avoid negative feelings and the negative emotions, I was avoiding the positive too. I remember somebody told me that, and I said, well, there's no way I can feel all of this right now, because I wanted to get to the positive stuff. So I knew that I had to do both. And I remember laying on the floor one day and I just had decided, I'm just going to start feeling this, stuff to see what happens. And I was just like, you're so tight in your chest, and I just relaxed and I just started feeling it. And I noticed that I didn't die. And for some reason, I thought that I was going to, if I just sat with the emotions and along with the feeling and the mantras and the self-forgiveness, the good feelings started coming in too. And they really do, like a laser blast through those dark, heavy feelings, but you got to let them all in. And I was afraid of that. So by doing that, I allowed myself to then generate the love and know where to direct that. So, yeah.
Yeah, what you touched on there with kind of the question is like, what do you do with the feelings? And that was, for me, the first question. I'm a firm believer in, if you're stuck, find a good question, because a question is going to pull you somewhere else. It's going to expand the way you think about something. And that's just kind of how my mind works. And that's what I'll never forget the question I got. I was sitting in a ceremony and had a pretty insane experiences and stuff. And then just this voice just asked me this question and said, what do you do with the hurts that hurt? And what do you do with the pains that pain? And what do you do with the feelings that feel all the hurts and pain? And I was like, well, I don't know. I don't know. I'm so disconnected. I was one of those people that had just pushed everything down so much. And it was like a delay between actually feeling it and when it had occurred. And that question, it just stuck with me. And I didn't let it go, because I think that if you're messing with something that is infinite, something beyond comprehension, you're going to open a door or you're going to pull on a rope, and eventually you're going to find out it's a lot more than what you thought it was. And in that moment, you have to allow yourself to be more courageous than you're used to. You have to take a risk, and that's when spiritual principles really come alive for you. Things like faith, things like hope. We talk about it out in corporate world or things like that. It doesn't really lay over the way it does when you're going into this, because these things it's how you deal with the infinite. And you need something that is bigger than just a method or a practice. You need something that encompasses method, that has all practice in it. It's the first step to a kind of a mode of being. And if you've been suppressing, then I kind of experienced it like a tape, the old VHS that's fast forwarding, and you see everything kind of like, like going really fast. Like it was like my past. And when these feelings would come up, it was like a fast forward. It was happening. Like all of it was going really fast. And then you like kind of come to, and you're like, oh, I'm back in the present moment. I'm here. And I really like the internal family systems strategy, because it's about recovering exiled parts of yourself and addressing managers and firefighters as like the kind of the words they pull, because it really, a lack of self-esteem is a lack of wholeness, and a lack of wholeness occurs because to be fully yourself was dangerous in some regard, either socially, physically, emotionally. In some way it was dangerous for you, whether you perceived it or it was literally dangerous. You're going to kind of exile yourself or a fragment of yourself, and really you're trying to recover. And your feelings are not your enemy. They're the road to that recovery, and that's really what I kind of found for myself, was that every time I felt something, not only did it take me deeper, but it led me somewhere that I had never been. And that was always the opportunity to be something that I had never been before. So
I love that, David. So guys, we're getting a question on the YouTube channel, and the question reads, what advice would you give someone who is learning or starting to set boundaries for self-love?
Ooh, so in my in my deck of cards that I put together, that was something that I wrote, was to set your boundaries. It's so hard because I acknowledge within myself that when I first started to learn how to do this, I felt selfish. I felt loud. I felt guilty for setting boundaries. I didn't even know how to do it, but everything that I did, it's like, oh, you can't treat me that way. Oh, never mind. Yeah, you can. It was like you have to decide what you are going to accept, and then you have to make it non-negotiable. But it's hard because that cycle that you're on is telling you that you're small and that you're not good enough and that you're not lovable and that you're unworthy. So when you get on a different cycle of, this is how you're going to treat me, this isn't negotiable. My anger, my healthy anger, is going to teach me what I like and what I don't like. I'm going to listen to my emotions. That was powerful for me, right? To say, this is non-negotiable. I'm not going to allow someone to treat me this way. If you want to treat somebody that way, you can, but it's not going to be me. And what I found is I had this fear that I was going to lose that person. And then I realized that I can't, if somebody isn't going to respect how I need to be treated, then it's probably not best for them to be in my life anyway, because if they're not going to change, they're just going to treat me like crap forever, right? So I had to get really serious with myself and respect myself and be bold and say, it's non-negotiable. This is how you treat me. This is how I like to be treated. These are my boundaries. And with a healthy person, it depends too. I'm sure you guys all know this. If it's a healthy person, you can chat with each other, talk about it, talk it out, but if it's an unhealthy person or a toxic person, there's always like some kind of manipulation or some kind of confusion. You're like, I'm just trying to tell you how to treat me, I'm in a healthy relationship and I've never had that this is how it's going to go. This is how you're going to treat me, because he just kind of knows, but we also talk about it, so that I think that really, my opinion, I don't know whoever else wants to touch upon that, but my opinion is it depends on if it's a toxic personality or if you're having a healthy relationship, but it really is. I just want to finalize by saying non-negotiable. How you are treated has to be non-negotiable, and you have to respect yourself, because nobody else is going to do that for you at the end of the day.
Chrissy, your mic's not on.
You're muted.
Sorry, my dog was barking, so I turned it off for a minute.
Now you're off camera. Well, while Chrissy is unmuting and getting back on camera, David, do you want to touch on that? Oh, Chrissy, you're back. Okay.
There, sorry. I'm sorry, guys. I turned my mic off because my dog was barking. I don't want her to disturb you guys. So I have to touch on this subject because that was so beautiful, Laura, and it's kind of goes along with what she said. I was somebody who did not set boundaries. So for anybody listening who's not in this situation already, who's someone who's like not in relationships, the best thing to do is set boundaries up front, because once you set them up front, they are non-negotiable, because then that person doesn't look at you as like, oh, okay, like where'd my person go? Like you're different now. However, it sounds like, a lot of us aren't in that situation. So, and like Laura said, it depends on the relationship. I was with a narcissist, a year ago, and thankfully I had already started my healing journey. So I kind of already knew within a couple months what kind of person he was. But like she said, it has to be non-negotiable, and you can't be afraid of losing them, because if they aren't willing to respect your boundaries, then they are not worth having. My person, he was like basically posting pictures with other women when we were together. And I finally gave him that. And I said, it's enough is enough. And I went to his house and I got my stuff and I said, I'm done. And he said, like, he tried to tell me I was a bad mom. He tried to degrade me. And I said, no, I'm done, because you aren't worth my time anymore. And that was basically the start of my really, when I finally realized I loved myself. So I just have to, it's kind of what Laura said, but I'm so passionate about that. You just have to understand that it's non-negotiable, and you are worth more than whatever. Like, if someone doesn't want to respect your boundaries, just know that you're worth it. You are worth having somebody who loves you and who will respect your boundaries. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah, if I can have a chance to answer, if we have time, I think on the boundaries are directly related to self-esteem, because as you know who you are, one of my favorite philosophers, Nietzsche, said, and I'm paraphrasing it, he says that the lonely one offers himself too quickly. And when you don't have self-esteem, you're looking for something. You're looking to get something. And without self-esteem, you're going to be a little bit desperate. So when someone offers you anything, you're like, I'll take it. I'll take it. And it's really about self-esteem. As you get to know yourself, you're like, it doesn't resonate with me. And so as you kind of get to that place, first of all, you're no longer influenced by everyone else's opinion. So when someone lashes out at you, you see that there's a problem happening with them. There's some kind of thing. And so it opens up empathy. And then on top of that, it becomes very simple. Setting a boundary is just saying, I'm not going to pick up a poisonous snake, because that would be dangerous. You don't have to judge or criticize or anything like that. You just see that this is not healthy. You see that this is in alignment with what you're creating. And so you don't pick it up. As a painter, if you're painting a blue sky, you're not going to dip it in the purple paint. Just maybe if you're blending, I guess, but it's too technical for the metaphor. But you get what I'm saying. With self-esteem, you're not looking to get something from the world. You have everything you need right here. One of my favorite quotes from the Bible is, I've learned to live with a little and I've learned to live with a lot. Or Alan Watts says, enough is as good as a feast. When you hit that place of just being content and knowing yourself so deeply that you're like, I don't really need anything. Everything becomes a choice, which is where real love actually has a chance to blossom, because neediness, we set boundaries first out of neediness because we need to be safe, or we need to be protected, or but then it grows from that to where it's, you're kind of a force in the world. When you move, things move with you. You're moving with something a lot bigger than you. And so when something comes at you that doesn't resonate, it just kind of misses. You're just like, and you'll find that people will feel foolish when they treat you poorly, and it just doesn't resonate with you. There's no reaction happening in you. So there's nothing for them to latch on to or to build their attack up with. You're just like, you all right? You okay? I feel like it becomes very simple. You just, I'm not going near that. Thanks though. Yeah. That's kind of what it became for me.
And then you just let them go too. Like I have to touch on that too, because like we can't hold on to the anger. So once you can get to that point and just be like, okay, like I'm going to have these boundaries and I matter, then you also have to just kind of you can't hold on to the anger either. I just want to touch on that. Like Laura said earlier about forgiveness, you do have to kind of forgive it because you're forgiving them for yourself, not for them. So just remember that. Don't be angry about it. Just kind of understand that you're worth it and that you matter and that you can have boundaries and it's okay. And the people meant for you will find you, and just let it go and then just be done with it. That's it.
I love what all of you said about it, but like in my experience, and this is again, opinion of one, journey of one, but in my experience, I found that in order for me to create the boundaries, I had to have a healthy dose of confidence and self-respect to even get to the point of setting those boundaries, to be completely honest. And I think that for anybody who is at the onset of this journey of, not having of not feeling into their own self-worthiness and self-love, I think it's really hard to establish those self-boundaries. I think it's really hard because that takes courage. Like when you don't have self-love, it's really, really scary to raise your hand, to speak up, to have your authentic voice be heard, not the voice that not say the things that are safe. Because like I said, I was a chameleon and I knew exactly what was safe. I knew what to say when, but my voice wasn't coming through. My voice wasn't coming through. A voice was coming through. And it wasn't until I started through painful experiences, through failures, so I did some really crazy things on my self-discovery journey. I literally would sit down, and journaling was a big part of my journey. And I would write out, like, what are the things that I'm really bad at that I'm really afraid to try? So I had things like pottery on there because I am so not artistic. I can't draw a stick figure to save my life. I can't paint. I can't do pottery. I can't play tennis. I was petrified of playing tennis because I'm so not coordinated. I identified all the things that I was really awful at. And I said, okay, those are the things I'm going to go do. So I started to take these low risk chances, low stake risks. How's that? Like the stakes weren't high. Like if I fail at pottery, I'd fail at pottery. And every single week I'd show up and I couldn't put the clay on the wheel, and the teacher would sit and babysit me the entire time because I was awful at it. And in tennis, I was clearly like in the beginner class, but I was clearly the worst of the beginners. It was like so embarrassing. I would like sometimes shake on the court because I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to hit that ball. Right. And so you go through that, like, right. You go through that discomfort. In that discomfort, I started to gain self-confidence, not because I was good at things, but because I was okay with failing, and I was okay with being wrong, and I was okay with being bad at something. In that confidence, I started to find my voice. And when I started to feel into my confidence and my self-worthiness, and I started to see me for who I am, and I respected myself for showing up, not for doing something well, but I was respecting myself for showing up despite being really awful at something. In that, I found my voice. In that, I found my confidence. And in that, I found the courage to have the boundaries in my life and then to voice those boundaries. And so I think that there are a couple of baby steps that need to happen before you can really put up the boundaries that you need to in your life. So I kind of like wanted to tie that together.
That's beautiful. And I do agree with that. And I think that was so beautiful because it is hard and we make it sound easy. Like I feel like I now I'm like, oh crap. Cause I feel like I made it sound like it's an easy thing. And it's honestly, whoever asked that question, it's not easy. And I don't mean to be flip about that because it's not freaking easy at all. Like it is one of the hardest things. I'm going to cry again. Seriously, I've got tears again, but it's literally because I just think back to my journey and it's not easy. For 20 years of my life, I let people treat me like shit, you know, and I didn't care. Like I thought that I had to have the validation to be worthy. And so whoever asked that question, whoever's watching, just understand that I know it's not easy. And what she just said was absolutely just amazing. So anyway, sorry. I'm crying.
No, that
I cry all the time.
you made me think though, Chrissy, it's not easy because it's something we've never done. So there's like a lot of unknowns and you don't know what you're doing. And Vicky, you made a beautiful point. There are some foundational things because you don't even really know what boundaries you're making. So it sounds like when you went out and you were almost grounding yourself in who you were and grounding yourself in that self-acceptance of being good or being bad at something. It didn't matter, but you were also just spending time with yourself. And I did that in a different way. But one of the first things I had to do too was I didn't even the communication. I didn't communicate with myself. And I almost like had to take notes and say, is this okay with me? Let me go check with Laura. Is this okay with you, Laura? You know,
I love that. I love that.
Laura comes back and says, this is not okay with her. She doesn't like it. Is she sure she doesn't like her? Or does she just, because your feelings are so, you don't even know why you're doing stuff, right? You're like, am I doing this because I love the person, or am I doing it because I'm letting them walk all over me? Am I being a doormat? So there's a lot of that communication figuring out that I personally had to do. So, but that was the questions I asked. Is this okay with Laura that she's treated this way, you know? And someone on the chat here made a beautiful point too, is that I was like, would I want my kid to be treated this way? Because sometimes you don't see the perception when you're in it. Like if this was my daughter and she was being treated this way, would I think it's good? No. Okay. Laura doesn't like to be treated this way. Right. So that communication with yourself and just getting to know your likes, your dislikes, and your preferences, for me, it was one of those first steps too, Vicky, like you were saying, those foundational steps.
Absolutely.
That I took.
As you get to know yourself too, it really is. I just want to emphasize that it really is a process of mastery. You know, it is self-mastery, because the things we've mastered, we don't think about, you know, like breathing. I don't have to sit and think about breathing, you know, but there are times when that process gets interrupted. You have to think about breathing. You know, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you had to remind yourself to breathe. Those times exist. You know, when something comes and knocks you off of your nature of what's just natural flow, it kind of forces you into a moment, you know, it brings you out of just kind of that flow space. But as you stack up, like Vicky mentioned, having the anxiety on the tennis court, you know, shaking and like being embarrassed and all that, like that's a part of mastery, you know. And as you master yourself, even setting boundaries will become like breathing. It just happens. You're not thinking about it. It's just you flow into it, but it doesn't start that way. Nothing that you try to master is going to start with you being the best ever at it, unless you're some kind of Mozart, which there's only been one Mozart that I know of, like or Ramajan, the math genius. I don't know if I'm even saying his name right, but it's gonna start. Confidence is earned, but self-esteem is inherent. And once you get the self-esteem, the inherent part of it, your confidence can be earned just by practicing over and over. And then next thing you know, you're ripping, you're shredding it, and you don't have to think about it. It just flows.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. It just becomes a part of who you are, and you don't have to do the work anymore because your boundaries are energetically, people feel them. And that's the
Right.
problem, is that they don't feel them. But when you have your boundaries up, you carry yourself differently. You walk through life, and you walk in, and you kind of when you walk into the room, everybody can feel it, your energy. And it really is different between a person who has no boundaries and a person who is like grounded in who they are and they know what they expect, so that was a good question. Yeah.
Right. Does anybody else have any questions? Like, I don't know if anybody here has any questions. You can raise your hand, or anybody else have any questions? We would be happy to answer them for you guys. If anybody would like to talk to us, or, raise your hand here on Zoom and come on, we would be happy to talk to you guys. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah. And Vicky does have a 7 days of journaling prompts. Vicky, could you tell them where to find that, and maybe make sure it's in your chat and so that they can find that? I feel like it's really valuable for them to know how to start, a place to start.
Yeah, thank you for that, Laura. So like I said, a lot of my introspection happened in my writing, like in those types of exercises or journaling prompts, because the problem I had was I didn't know where to start even, right? All I knew was that there was this emotion, but then I had no idea how to introspect, because I've never had to do that before in my life. And so I created this, here, I'll put it into the chat, a 7-day introspection journey that you can essentially go through. And I put the URL in the chat so that you can just go through and ask yourself and introspect, and I give you a couple of, a summary of the different elements of self-love, but then also some journaling prompts just to get you going. And then as you start to write, you really start to feel into, where you're at. And it's just so incredibly beneficial. And I still have my journals. I don't know about you guys, but I have notebooks and notebooks and notebooks full of my journals, and I never threw them out because it was my journey. That's a part of me, right? It's such a difficult time for me to look back on, but it's a part of me, and I love that part of me now, so for anybody going through that. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying that's amazing. I was just giving you kudos. I was just saying that's amazing. So
Thank you. And it's an editable PDF, because I'm like one of those people who can't figure out how our printer works. So I'm like, oh, I should make it an editable PDF, because I don't know how to print anything. I am like technologically challenged.
I may even check out your journal prompts, to be honest with you, Vicky. Like, I've journaled, but I'll tell you, my journals are all over the place. I have notes. Literally, I have like probably 5 journals here at my house. I've got a manifestation journal. I've got, a shadow work journal. I've got them everywhere. And I literally have notes everywhere. So disorganized. So I may check that out. I'm just saying.
Listen, it's free, it's there. And also make sure to go to Laura's website. Yeah, I relate to that.
She relates to that.
Yeah.
Jeanette relates to that. Yes, I hear you, girl.
Yeah, but also please make sure to go to Laura's website. Your card, I'm going to download your card deck. I think it's so awesome.
Yeah.
I love the way that you did it as a cycle, because it's so incredibly true. That's exactly, it's funny. So I did this personality quiz, and my personality quiz came back as and this was for entrepreneurship, but my personality quiz came back as a star. A star is somebody who's like, they don't create something from the ground up. So like, not like a, I don't know, Steve Jobs, I don't know, who's like the big inventor. But I am somebody like, when you hear something that resonates, you're like, oh, yes, that's a light bulb. That totally makes sense to me. So like when Laura said it, oh, it's a cycle. I'm like, totally. I'm like, yes, Laura, that's exactly what that is. So like when you said it, it totally resonated. So I hope that people go and check it out and download.
Yeah, I'll put my link here or my website here in the chat in a second. Maybe you can share it on YouTube. But what happened with me is that I used to teach about thought energy, and I still do sometimes, about thought and the vibrational frequencies of thoughts and where they come from and the different kinds of thoughts, and how thought is like a bridge, because we also create with thought, right? We create from it, we experience it as energy. Everything starts off as a thought and then an emotion. And when I wrote the book, The Self-Love Cycle, I realized that it's just a different thought cycle that I was in when I was in my worst times. You know, like I said, it's just which one did I prefer? It was just a different cycle. And so I had to take the actions to bring myself into alignment with the cycle that I wanted to be in. And if you could start with your thoughts, start with your thoughts. If you can start with behaviors and actions, start with that. If you could start with your emotions, start with that. It doesn't matter where you start, because they're all part of the cycle. And then I kind of reduced it down to these cards, because I said, first of all, the book's being reformatted so that you could download it on my website too. So you'll get the book as soon as it's reformatted, and the cards just by going to my website, put your email in, you can download it right there. The book will come a little bit later, but the cards you get right there, and it tells you exactly how to use them. And what's within the cards is just, the things that I actually started writing, literally everything. If you guys ever tried to write a book before, you're like, or anything, all this stuff comes out and I don't even know where this is going. And I did all the things that I did wrong. These are the things that I did wrong. And I said, well, I can't give all this to somebody. They don't know what that is. And so what I did is I realized that instead of telling you what I did wrong, I'm going to tell you what to do right. And that's what the cards are the actions that I took and the ways of being that I applied to myself. And it's going to be probably a ever growing when it comes to my mind. But the ones in the deck right now are the ones that I found are the just the most impactful, the things that I did that gave that cycle momentum. So yeah, that's free also on my website. And I've shared it with a few people. So the deck with a few people, and they're like, wow, this is really helpful. So I'm pretty proud of it.
I love
That's
that.
awesome.
Yeah.
I'll probably be checking those out too. So
they're free. They're there. Go for it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'm posting them on my YouTube channel right now as we speak. So, so for anybody who is interested. Okay. Sorry, I'm distracted.
No, you're fine. You're
Trying to
fine.
post.
It's great.
I'm trying to post on my YouTube site. Okay.
No.
And
They
Chrissy,
can help somebody, they can help somebody. Those cards can help somebody.
Yeah. I agree with you. You know what? I just wanted to say this. I don't know how long we're going to be on here, but I just wanted to say this because what Vicky said was so impactful. And the reason why I like her journaling prompts is because I learned, David, you probably sound like you know what I'm going to say here. I learned that you can't solve a problem from the level that you're at. So we self-diagnose ourselves, right? We're like, oh, I have this problem. And then we'll go find a coach and we're like, I need you to help me with this problem. And then we know what the solution is based from our problem, right? Well, as a coach, every time I've talked to somebody about what their problem is, their desires are actually way different than what they want is way different. They're just in that mind of trying to solve the problem from that level. And so what I love about Vicky's journaling prompts is that they're from the level that she's at. So you've done all this work, right? So it's from a level that the problem can be solved from, if that makes sense. So I just wanted to add that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm thinking of doing more journaling prompts. I'm such a fan of, I mean, that just, it really helped me, like, honestly, because I think the hardest part is when you don't know what you don't know. I think
Yeah.
it's the hardest part of anything,
Mhm.
right? It's with your career, it's with anything in life, right? And I think, again, like, at least for me, I genuinely didn't know what the concept of self-love was. I was like, okay, so don't laugh at me. This is a super vulnerable moment. But I was like one of those people. I was like, I'd look in the mirror. I'm like, all right, I look decent. I'm not like, I had two babies. I don't look bad for somebody who had two babies. Like, okay, all's well with the world, right? Because I thought that self-love was like the external, never realizing that it's actually the internal. It's that inner, right? And so, and I remember talking to a friend of mine. She and I, we were out to dinner, and she was going through a divorce. And I said, what prompted your divorce? And she started sharing with me, and she said, I didn't have self-love. And I was like, well, what do you mean you didn't have self-love? I'm like, you're so accomplished and you're so amazing. And like, I think the world of my friend. And she was like, Vicky, I would look in the mirror and I wouldn't like who I saw. And so I remember coming home, looking in the mirror, and I was like, no, I like who I see. That was it, right? Like, that was that. And then COVID hit, and like this whole thing, right, unraveled for me. So I'm just seeing that, like, it's all about where you're at. And I think a lot of times you just don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. I relate to that so much, Vicky, because I was kind of the same way before. And I would look and, and I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. And so if anybody, the thing that I want people to take away from this whole conversation from me is it really does take going within. It takes going within, whether it's journaling, whether it's meditation, whether it's walking in nature, whatever it is for you, whatever works for you is what is good for you. And you just really need to take some moment, especially right now we're in a Mercury retrograde, which is astrology. It's a whole other thing, but I mean, it is really a good time to go within yourself and just figure out what it is you want, who it is you are, look in the mirror, say affirmations to yourself. That's a huge help for me. I wake up every morning grateful, saying affirmations. I mean, it's just really time to go within. And that's just the final point that I want to make to everybody watching is just, it's really an important time to go within right now.
Yeah, in dealing with that, I think that you move like what Vicky was talking about. She would go and look, and kind of had this materialistic idea of like what was, not to be judgmental, you know what I'm saying? But I think it's moving from to know yourself. You really have to move towards your felt experience. And instead of looking out there, you have to start looking at your thoughts and kind of watch them move through the space in your mind and watch as it kind of, that's going to be different for everyone. But as you watch it, one of the greatest tools I learned was from the Fifth Agreement. The guy, Don Ruiz, I think it was Don Ruiz Jr. wrote the actual Fifth Agreement, because you have the four agreements, which is great. But the Fifth Agreement is great because it says, be skeptical, but learn to listen. And you don't have to believe every thought you have, and you don't have to believe every feeling you have. Oftentimes, and this is where I go back to like the internal family systems, there are parts of you that are trying to do jobs that they are not equipped to do. And they actually want to do something else, but everyone's covering down. Like in the military, someone falls out of rank. Well, you cover down. Someone falls out, you still got to carry the weapon, still got to carry the bag, still got to carry it. Like, doesn't matter. Someone's doubling up. And that's really what's happening kind of inside of you. You have to move to the felt experience without believing everything that is coming across the mind, especially it really comes down to that conditioning, like when you stop attaching yourself to every thought or every feeling, it's going to feel like dissociation at first. It's going to feel like a whole lot of, I don't know. But it goes back to what Vicky said, like, you don't know what you don't know. So you really have to create the space for new possibility before you can know anything, because you already know what you've known. You want to know something new. So it really, you have to allow yourself to enter that space of flux, and it feels very weird to be ungrounded. And some people experience symptoms of psychosis. It just depends on what kind of person you are. You're going to have weird feelings. And that's why I would just say, like, be skeptical, but listen and be curious. And the thing that resonates with you, you'll know what you're looking for when you see it. You're like, oh, okay. And that thing will get deeper. So you'll understand it at one level. And as you move through, it'll open up and you'll understand it at a deeper level and a deeper level. But that's only going to come through application. So once you learn it, apply it, and apply it with your full force. So Tony Robbins, that's a big name. He always said, I can't remember if it's rapid massive action or massive rapid action, but either way, it's you just go with it. And we've touched on it 100 times in this about not being afraid to fail and all that. It all it starts to come together, and you enter a new flow. And when you get in that space, you'll start to say, you'll come across something, you're like, what if I try it this way instead? You're like, oh, nope, that wasn't good. Then you're like, oh, wait, this is actually way better. It's trial and error. Choices are both our educator and the evidence that we've been educated. So if you don't know where you're going, it's like the Alice in Wonderland quote. It's like, well, if you don't know where you're going, then anywhere will do. Just start by doing anything. Like, Vicky, I don't know if you still play tennis, but like, obviously, yeah, all right. So like that grew into something for you. Maybe
I
you pick
love
up
it.
something.
I am
Maybe,
loving it, and I'm actually having fun with it now.
Awesome.
There you go.
I love the tennis story. I love the tennis story.
And not only that, I now recruited a friend who's going through a divorce. No,
made a disciple.
and
I'm coming to play tennis with you, Vicky. I want to play tennis with you now because that sounds so much fun.
because you know what? The perfect coach walked into my life. Like literally, he's like amazing. I recruited my girlfriends. We're having like Monday night is fun. It's fun night for us. And we have such a tremendous time. Like I went from being horrified of it to like actually having fun with it, with the right tennis coach and with so I think, David, I'm sorry I interrupted you. I just had to share that I'm like loving it now. I think all of this is to say the journey is hard, but it is so worth it, because you end up somewhere completely miraculous on the other side of it. Something miraculous and unexpected awaits you on the other side of it. Something you cannot even imagine. You can't even predict, but it is magic.
I love that. I love that. It's just have fun along the way, right? Have fun along the way. That's what it's about. That's what the journey's about.
And don't be afraid to suffer. That's what I'll say. Don't be afraid of suffering. Not everything that's scary can kill you. That's what one of my big mentors, his name's Demian. That's what he would always say to me. He's like, Cannon, not everything that's scary can hurt you. It's when you realize that the monsters, a little story I wrote was this was when I was first kind of getting my chops with children's books, and it was my first attempt. And one of the little characters he goes into Plato's cave, and like these are big scary monsters, but then Plato shows him like when you go into it and bring the light in, then you see that the shadows actually can represent something that's very small. But if you keep your eyes on the projection, then it's going to look like something that it might not be. And when you get to the reality, you'll find that the majority of what you're dealing with are the thorns, the little thorns that festered. And it really starts to help you put things in perspective, because that will eventually help you to, especially in like what we talked about, setting boundaries before, you get real life experience. We used to have cats growing up, like lots of cats. I mean, there's one point we had like 20 cats, but not indoors. Like they were outside, but we just kept feeding them and they just kept showing up, But an interesting thing with cats is if they don't get socialized, when they play with you, they'll be too rough. They'll hurt you. But if you hold them a lot, they kind of know like how to play without being harmful. And, it's that experience is going to give you that kind of wisdom. And wisdom is the application of the knowledge. and that's only going to come through failure. That's what makes you wise. So.
Yeah, well said. And if I wasn't scared, I eventually I questioned whether I was on the right track. I was like, oh, this isn't scary enough. I wasn't growing, but it really did take a lot of courage in the beginning to take those actions that perpetuated the next step. And then I said, okay, if it's not scary, I'm not doing it, because that's how I could start to define where my growth moments were through that fear. So it's going to feel that way, and that's okay. And I think what I'd like to end with is the scary feelings that we have as we navigate this. I don't let them sit in the driver's seat. They're in the passenger seat. They could be there. They could be in the back seat. They're going to be there though, but you do it in spite of it, and you do it regardless. And the cool thing about that, when I learned that, is I made sure that fear was somewhere, like I said, or I wouldn't know. I would think that I was starting to settle into an old habit or not learning a new part of myself. And I don't want to say that there's always fear in the unknown, even though there is sometimes, but I felt afraid of the unknown. Does that make sense? I felt very scared of, well, I don't know where this is going. And I honestly think it was because that's what the evidence was in my brain. It showed, okay, if you go there and you don't know where it goes, it's going to be bad. You do that 2 or 3 times in your life and you're like, okay, let's not do that again. But once you get through that and you realize that it's not always scary, you do start that perpetuated cycle, and then you're not scared anymore. And now I'm like, bring it on. What, and then you learn these coping skills, and then you have these boundaries, and then you're like, where was this part of me all these years? And like Vicky said, I love this part of me now. I love my struggles. I loved all the crap that I went through. Do I wish it upon anybody else? No, but it developed me, and it developed who I am. And I thank the people, it took a lot of strength and a lot of healing to thank the people and thank myself for making the decisions that I made. Because without all of that, you guys, none of us would be here shining our light for others. And we're in service, and I can tell it's really deep in all of our hearts to be in service for anybody watching and everybody watching, because we've paved the path. We've gone through the brush with the Hackett and said, okay, we did that. This is how you can do it too. So I just wanted to end with that.
I love that. Let the fear be your guide. That's what my mentors say all the time. Let the fear guide you. And I love it.
Yeah, we resist it, right? And we think it's not supposed to be there, but no, it's there.
It's good. It's a good thing.
And let's get really honest and vulnerable. Tonight was even apprehensive and scary in many
So
ways.
scared.
But right, like, this is our first YouTube live together. I met all of you individually. We had no idea what was going to come through, but I think so much beauty came through. And I hope that whoever joined us and whoever ends up hearing this on any of our channels, I hope that you guys got something out of it that is of service to you and that is of help to you. And, in full transparency and in our most vulnerable selves, hey, we had no idea how all of this was going to come together, but it did. And it flowed, and it was so fun, and it was so beautiful. And I genuinely loved the comments, the participation. I loved our conversation. And, I hope that this is one of the first of many, many, many lives that we're going to do together, because I think that we have something really special to share with the world. And so whoever is watching, make sure to come back and share and comment. And, I think that this is a space where we can all evolve together and we can all grow together, because that's what this journey is all about. It's our growth and our evolution together. So, and the journey back to self.
Yes.
Yes.
Someone said, when is the next one? I think we're doing every Wednesday, right? 8:30. Every Wednesday at 8:30. we're gonna be here. So yeah, whoever that, I don't remember who that was that just commented, but I think it was, I'm looking right now, Ashley. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna come back. So
Every
yeah.
Wednesday, 8:30 Eastern. You're Eastern time, right? And I'm
Yes.
Pacific, so 5:30 Pacific.
5:30 Pacific. Okay, I never remember that. Thank you, Laura. I never remember the times. Yeah, so I hope you guys come back and join us. Invite your friends, invite your family. And I hope you guys, I want to hear from you guys. I want to participate with you guys. I've had so much fun.
And in the future, we're going to do hot seats. That means you get to come
Yeah.
on live and you can get coached by all of us who've gone through the hell and back. We've been to hell
Yeah.
and back,
Yeah.
but we're here and ready. We're here and ready to help and to serve. And that's what this is all about. It's of being of service to everybody out there. So it's free, it's live. Come join us and tell your friends about it.
Yes.
All right.
Exactly.
So
All
much.
right,
I love-
everyone.
I love everybody here so much.
Thank you, David. So good to see you. Chrissy.
too.
Everybody.
See y'all.
You.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye.